Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of This Week in AML. I'm John Byrne, Chair of the AMLRS Advisory Board.
And I'm Elliot Berman, our Creative Director. We are excited to welcome you to the This Week in AML podcast,
where we explore key news and developments in the global financial crime prevention community.
Hi, John. How are you today?
Elliot, doing fine. How are you?
I'm good, too. It's a gorgeous day here in the Midwest. It's almost 70 degrees, which is, for the beginning of November, is kind of a gift.
I bet.
So, FinCEN actually has been pretty busy already this week, and we're recording earlier in the week than we usually do. But one of the things that they published is their financial trend analysis about ransomware trends coming out of the Bank Secrecy Act data for the second half of 2021. So a year ago, in October of 2021, they published a similar analysis for the period of the first 6 months of 2021. And now, a year later, they've come out with the second half of the data. Did you see that publication?
Yeah, I did, and I thought it was obviously it's extremely current, even though it was the second half of 2021. And a couple of things struck me. One is the acting director's comments that this obviously impacts national and economic security, which is, of course, true, but also the importance of the filing of suspicious activity reports, because I think, as you and I were talking about offline, this is only one way in which ransomware gets reported. So the fact that these filings have increased significantly is sort of part of the story. The other part is the amount that comes in through different vehicles we don't know, but it's certainly consistent with what law enforcement has been talking about for quite a while. And ransomware, as we know, has such a devastating impact on companies if you're not prepared for them. So yeah, I did see that, and was definitely struck by the dramatic increase in numbers. A good document, a good analysis. They have the dollar values in there, the number of incidents, and then, as the acting director said, how many of the activities related to a nexus to Russia, which is, of course, the main place in which ransomware emanates in the U.S.
Yeah, so they talked about, so there's a million numbers in here, so I want to make sure I pull the two I want that are meaningful. So they talked about 69% Russian-related ransomware variants accounted for 69% of the ransomware incident value.
Right.
75% of the incidents. So, that is a very strong tie. They also talked about how they made the connection, or how they determined that it was somehow Russia connected. And they pointed out that they used open source resources. So I think that was a nice way to say they're not using anything from the intelligence community or
right.
the cyber command or any of those other government resources. They're doing the same thing that you or I, if we were probably a little smarter, could try to do just using the internet. So I thought that was interesting. And as you mentioned, our offline conversation, I think I want to reiterate that. Remember, this is coming out of the BSA data, which is essentially the SAR data. So this is only coming from organizations that have an obligation, a SAR filing obligation, which is a lot, but there are many, many, many business corporations, hospitals who have been hit, and education institutions and things like that, whose incidents are not in this information. That doesn't mean that the government isn't aware of it, and that some of that data might not be available, but it's not in this particular trend analysis.
Right, and the average monthly amount is pretty eye-opening. $81 million, median being $80 million. Obviously, as they say, that's not nothing. So there's quite a bit of lost dollars. The full data, they say, consisted of 1,000 filings reporting 750 million in ransomware-related activity. So, like you say, it's not everything, but this is still quite a bit. And given the fact that it's only been fairly recently that SAR filers were looking for ransomware. I mean, obviously institutions were, but SAR filers were not. This is really eye-opening, and I think that that's important. The other thing too is they describe what ransomware is, going back to malicious software that we know encrypts the victim's files, holds the data hostage until you pay the ransom, and a lot of that ransom they want now today in Bitcoin. And there's also some recommendations toward the tail end of the report on what institutions will do, which we can mention in a minute. But what other things struck you?
Well, there are several graphs. I mean, again, it's a trend analysis, so there's a lot of numbers, but they've graphed some of them, and the one that at least caught my eye is the very first one, which is number of ransomware related BSA filings by filing and incidence dates 2011 to 2021. So, of course, in the early years up through 2011 through 2015, there are just a handful. I mean, I think the whole thing doesn't add up to more than 100
Right.
incidents. But then you start to see some, low to middle 3-digit numbers in 2016. They go down a little bit in 17 and 18 and stay low in 19. 2020, they jump considerably. So 2020 compared to 2021 is double in terms of the based on the incidence date. And then if you go to 2021, again, staying with, just to hold the numbers consistent, you go to 2021 over 2020 on using the incident date as the trigger, you're talking almost 3 times as many. And so it's about 7 times as many from 2021 going back to 2019. So we're talking about a hockey stick type curve here. Right. And you can look at the numbers as numbers, but I think the graph was helpful to sort of emphasize the ramp up. And there are other things, there are quite a few graphs and charts, and I think that those are, again, to grasp the problem, I think the magnitude of the problem, they're very helpful.
Yeah, and they also remind folks to look back at the FinCEN notice from November of last year on ransomware. Also, there's a lot of other places that a lot of other entities that are involved in looking at these crimes, law enforcement in general, OFAC specifically, if there's connection to sanctions, of course, but there's also obviously the FBI, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, Secret Service. They also indicate, besides going back to last year's statement from FinCEN, that there's others. CISA has a stopransomware.gov website that's sort of a one-stop shop, and NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, has a data integrity section, and many others too. But they give you a whole host of ways in which you can report cyber activity. Again, not just through FinCEN, but as we mentioned, CISA, OFAC, FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. So that's why I think it's not clear how much of all this information was put together from all those sources, but there's certainly a lot of places for our information technology experts in our community to respond to this.
Yeah, we will link to the report on our website. So if you catch our podcast through our website, or go to our website, if you listen to it on another source, The link will be there in the description of today's episode. But it's a, it's not a burdensome read, but I think it's a worthwhile read. It's a good refresher. As you and I have talked many times, many of these guidance or issuance pieces can help with either in-depth or quick hit type training, just to keep these issues top of mind with the right people in our listeners' organizations. So definitely something worth taking a quick look at. There also today, the White House hosted an international counter ransomware initiative summit, and some of these same issues were talked about there. So 36 countries were represented. So this is clearly a global problem. No one country or one set of government agencies or even one industry is going to solve this problem. So I'm sure that the release today of this document was timed to go along with the summit, but important to paying attention to these areas. So John, what else do you have coming up?
So a couple things. We just posted an interview that I did on the Basel AML Index for 2022. That's up on our site. We've posted that on LinkedIn. On the 17th of November, we mentioned this before, doing a deep dive into various types of terrorist financing activity, and that's going to be 1 o'clock Eastern. You can sign up for that on our website. And then I'm working on a potential interview webinar for December with a couple of individuals from the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, a very interesting investigative journalist group that's working on a couple of things that we want to highlight. So we are working on that now. I'm fairly confident we will get their involvement. It's going to have obviously something to do with corruption, which is what their main area of focus is. So more to come on that.
Yes, and we'll keep you advised as the weeks unfold as to the topics of our upcoming webinars. John, you and I, there's no spoiler alert here, but we're actually pretty far along in planning our topics for 2023, and we'll continue to let you know about those as the months unfold. So, John, anything else before we sign off?
Yes, vote, vote, vote. Don't boo, vote. So those of you that haven't voted early, election day is next week, November 8th. So do your duty and vote.
Agreed. Okay, good to talk to you. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
Yep, bye-bye.